Welcome to episode 73 of the Lebanese Physicians Podcast. And today we will be discussing the challenges of visually impaired people in Lebanon, specifically of children and adults. And our guest today is Yara Kobrossy. Yara, actually, she will tell us more about her in a bit, but she was diagnosed with a degenerative eye disease known as retinitis pigmentosa at the age of 8. With that, she was able to continue her studies, and she graduated from University of Balamand with a Bachelor of Art in Education and an MA in Education and Curriculum Management. Yara, you will tell us more about your progress and what you've done since graduation and even before graduation. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Khalil. It's my pleasure to be with you in this podcast. So what you've said is all true. After graduating from Balamand and working on my thesis, which I have published later on, I worked in many non-governmental organizations. I started as a volunteer. I used to teach English to students who had visual impairments. And then I started working more and more on life skills training, on engaging students with visual impairment in different social activities. So it was more on the social side rather than on the education side. And then I started working with another organization, but it dealt with refugees and so on. So it wasn't related as much to disabilities. But I'm currently working with an organization known as ShareQ. It has another branch, like under ShareQ, there is Pro-Abled and MC, social catering. So I am now working with Pro-Abled, and we actually work a lot with persons with disabilities. We train them to get employed in companies, and at the same time, we train these companies to accept and include people with disabilities in their team. So we try to work with both sides on better adapting.
So how was it when you were diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa back when you were 8? Because I'm sure you were at school at that time, and how were you able to navigate through school until you reached university?
So I actually had no idea that something was wrong. My parents, my sister used to tell me that I have a certain condition and so on, but I did not actually sense it until I was 17 years old, when I was preparing to start university. So I was writing my TOEFL exam and I couldn't see anything on the paper, and this was a shock to me. It really affected me. But then I said to myself, it's either I'm going to give up and not move on with my life, or I'm gonna try to overcome all the challenges and try to do something about it. So before I was diagnosed with RP, I had in mind, like to open my own business. I was in a totally different كتير هيك بجو تاني. بس when I got diagnosed, I started thinking more about people with disabilities. What can I do to help? How do they live? What do they do? How do they overcome the challenges? So I started getting more interested in this field. And this is why I changed my major from business to education. I focused all my projects, my papers, everything on students with disabilities. And then throughout my master's, I also focused a lot. My projects were very focused on how to include students with disabilities in mainstream schooling systems. And I actually worked with a school that was an inclusive school. So I went over the whole process with them. And it was amazing. Like, you were able to see how mainstream schools in Lebanon are able to include totally blind students or low vision students in their system, just with a little bit more effort from, of course, non-governmental organizations that train the staff and employ special educators, they call them, in these schools, to make the process easier and smoother.
So basically, that's a good thing you touched on, because in Lebanon, there's obviously public schools and there's private schools, but most people try to put their kids in private schools at this point because they feel the public schools do not have the adequate funding to provide a good education for their kids. So basically, because I'm sure there's the Ministry of Education and funding for these projects. So how does the Ministry of Education deal with this? And are private and public schools supported in providing special education to people with visual impairment?
So to my knowledge, non-governmental organizations are the ones working on this matter. So let's start with them first. So they are working with public and private schools. They train staff members to become special educators in these schools. So they type the books in Braille for the visually impaired students. They enlarge the print for visually impaired students. They try to facilitate the learning process in both public and private schools. And my thesis was actually in a private school. On the other hand, the government works more with specialized schools, which is the opposite of mainstream schools. So what they do is, it's a boarding school that only accepts students who are either blind or deaf, and they sleep there, they learn there, and they divide the curriculum for them. So let's say in mainstream schools, you complete grade 1 in 1 year. When you go to the specialized schools, you complete grade 1 in 2 different years. So they basically divide the curriculum, they put them in a class alone, they sleep there, and then after they graduate, they actually tell them to work in a factory, مثل القش, and like handmade stuff there. So it's a totally different approach. You either have this side or this side.
Right. So basically, it's more of a special education for visually impaired and let's say deaf kids, but then they steer them towards a certain profession and not necessarily to all professions, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So usually the students who graduate from mainstream schooling systems, they also go to mainstream universities, and I've seen a lot of these cases. So it's a different approach. Some of the students in specialized schools might go to mainstream universities, but it's more common for mainstream students who went to like mainstream schools to go to mainstream universities.
So basically right now, let's say there's a visually impaired kid at this point and they want to enter a mainstream school. Is it easy for them to find one and get accepted to it, or is it hard to do that? Because probably there's a limited number of schools who are doing this at this point, right?
Yes, of course. There is a non-governmental organization known as the Youth Association of the Blind, YAB. They work on this. They work on facilitating the education process, but they are not found, as you've mentioned, in each and every school. So if the school is not prepared for this, the parents either have to employ a shadow teacher to work with the school and to support the kid at school, or they're going to have to go to one of the schools that YAB works with that is well prepared and enroll their kids there.
That's why, because I think in Lebanon, you cannot, like, the kids are always tested before they go to private school, and private schools can make a decision whether or not to admit your kid. So what do you think? Do you think there is, like, do people feel there is discrimination against kids with visual impairment or disabilities at schools in Lebanon, or are things changing over time?
I think for kids, like, they wouldn't understand the perspective at first, but I think later on there will be discrimination until they grow a bit older, they become more mature, to understand. And since the numbers are very low, like, for example, in my university, I was one of the first people to enter with a visual impairment, and the university was not prepared for this. So I had to work with my professors on enlarging the text size. I used to write my exams privately, either on the laptop, or someone used to write for me, because at the end of university, I couldn't even read or write on a paper. So there will be some kind of discrimination, but as the kids get to know these kids, and as they get more mature, I think things will get better. Because for me now, I can feel some discrimination, of course, but it's much, much less than before for me.
We talked about NGOs on the ground trying to help with this. What are some of the main NGOs on the ground? And then if you can tell us a bit about your work with the current NGO you're working with.
As you know, Lebanon has a lot of NGOs working on ground in different fields. We have many NGOs, but the ones I have worked with, or I am familiar with, is Al-Muntada. It was founded by Dr. Nawaf Kabbara. He works in Tripoli. He helps many people with disabilities to learn skills. He supports them with providing them with wheelchairs, and he helps a lot of people in the area. There is the Youth Association of the Blind, which I have mentioned before. They work a lot on education and inclusive education. There is ShareQ. They work on employment of people with disabilities. So these are basically the three main organizations that I am well familiar with what they do, but I am sure there are many more working on amazing things as well.
After the students graduate from university, is it easy to get employment? And how do people go about doing that?
Of course, it's not easy. It's very hard for all Lebanese, and specifically for people with disabilities and people with visual impairment. I'm going to talk about people with visual impairment. So for us, for example, for me, I can't read anything on the phone. So I use a software called VoiceOver, and it reads everything on the phone for me. I also use VoiceOver on my MacBook. It reads all my emails. It helps me do my research. And I acquired these skills when I traveled abroad to continue my education. Organizations are responsible for teaching individuals who are visually impaired these skills. They are responsible for teaching them how to use a cane, how to navigate around a university campus. In Lebanon, this is not really what happens. So it's based on you and how much you want to learn. You try to maybe learn it on your own. Some NGOs can offer you some help, but basically you need to do it mostly on your own. And this is what maybe is challenging for both companies, because most of the companies are not prepared to include people with disabilities. And on the other hand, many of the individuals with disabilities are also not prepared to enter the workplace and gain all the different skills that they need to become independent in the workplace.
So are there laws to protect people? Let's say if somebody with a disability feels that they've been discriminated against, and let's say getting or being selected for a job, if they go and sue the company, are there laws to protect them because they've been discriminated against or have not been treated equally compared to other applicants?
Of course, there are laws, but I think it's just on paper. I don't think that they're taking it as serious as they should take it.
The other thing that I see also in Lebanon, when you compare it, let's say, to Canada or the US or some of the other countries, is there's no, let's say you go to a hotel or you go to a restaurant or you go to the beach, there's not always places, for example, for wheelchairs to go through or for people with disabilities to be able to access some of these places. Are there any NGOs working on this, or is there a push to make this more mainstream?
Yes, of course. You mean the universal design.
Right.
All places should be accessible for individuals with disabilities. Many organizations are working on this, including ShareQ. So they are consultants even for companies or for any entity that would like to implement this universal design. And we can see it in many different places in Lebanon. They're actually working on it. Even like governmental entities, municipalities are working on it, but it definitely needs more work.
Because I see it now as more of an individual thing where you go to a place, they do have it, other places don't have it. So my next question for you is, you've worked with multiple non-governmental organizations through the years to help people with disabilities or to advocate for people with disabilities, and currently you're a public speaker on the topic. Can you tell us about some of the work you've done and some of the future work that you are planning to do while you're in Lebanon at this time?
So I've worked a lot in training teachers who are going to be in these inclusive schools that I've mentioned before. I've trained a lot of students with visual impairment on different life skills. I trained a lot of staff members, even in managerial positions, to work with individuals who are disabled and who are visually impaired throughout the many years. And I was a public speaker in many different events in many different universities, in LIU, in Balamand, AUB, and many others, and with many other organizations. And I like to talk about this because I feel that most people might feel awkward when they're around people with disabilities. What should we do now? How should we act? What is right? What is wrong? So I like to tell people that we are normal people, just like you, but we have a certain disability that we can overcome. And with your help, with having an inclusive society, it's much, much easier to overcome the challenges. So for me, and thank God, I have a very supportive family, a very supportive husband, a very supportive community in general, very supportive friends. I feel that I can be involved in anything whenever I want. Of course, there are struggles, but I try my best, and the people around me try their best, and we try to overcome all the challenges together. So this is why I love to speak about it publicly in Lebanon. And I always tell whoever is listening to me, ask me whatever you want about anything you want, because I want you to understand how we are, so that we can all perfectly fit together in this society.
Right. And how do you feel the response has been over the years? Do you feel people are more understanding?
It depends. So you have both cases, but I feel when they see a strong person who is knowledgeable, who believes in themselves, who has achieved a lot, or who believes that they can achieve a lot, they would believe more in this person. I believe that it's how much the person believes in himself, like this reflects on everything else. And this is what makes the people believe in you and accept you and include you in this society. And as I have mentioned, like the struggles are a lot, the challenges are a lot, but we need to find ways to overcome them in order to be better included.
You were one of the first ones to enter Balamand University with a visual impairment. Do you have an idea, or is there data on the number of visually impaired students now at some of the major Lebanese universities?
No, I don't have the data, but for Balamand, I know that 2 students, or maybe more, but I know of 2, have entered the university after me, and it was a very pleasant experience for them. Even for me, and it was a very welcoming community, loving community. I had a lot, I faced a lot of challenges, but in general, I feel it was a very smooth journey with them.
Yeah, I think also in Lebanon, I think things tend to, as you can see, there's always turmoil and something happening. So people are very adaptable. So I feel even if there's not like a major plan in place, people can adapt very easily to different things and are able to make it work, whatever happens.
Yes, exactly. And people here are also caring and loving. And I feel these traits help individuals who need some support.
Can you tell us a bit about your current work with your current NGO and with ProAble?
I am now a consultant and trainer with ShareQ, with ProAbled, and it has been an amazing journey. So I basically work with them on making their website, all their material accessible for individuals with visual impairment, because as I have mentioned before, we always need to use speech software on whatever device we are using. So it's very important for all material to be accessible for us. And on the other hand, I work with them on training staff members and companies on how to include persons with disabilities into their workforce. It's been amazing. The impact on the individuals is amazing. We train companies in Lebanon and internationally, and the impact is really, really like so exciting to see that people are now getting to know what disability is more. They are accepting it more and more. So it's been rewarding.
You are doing this and working with individuals. Are you also working with bigger companies in Lebanon, let's say, to update their websites to make them accessible to visually impaired people?
Me personally, no, I'm not working on this. I haven't been approached by companies, but I would love it because, feeling independent is the most important feeling in the world for me. So it's very important for me to be able to navigate through a website, to be able to buy whatever I want, whenever I want, without any assistance. And there are many visually impaired individuals in Lebanon. So it would be great for all these websites and different platforms to be accessible for us to be able to use them.
And is there work with the Lebanese government? Because I imagine that if big-scale projects probably need to be done or be federally, what we call, here in the US called federally funded, but maybe at least government funded or government supported to make them large scale. Is there any work with the Lebanese government or any contact with them?
I personally have no idea about this topic. I've had an encounter previously with the Lebanese government, and it wasn't a nice encounter. So I haven't been working with them or being updated with whatever they have, but I have no idea about it.
Yeah, because my question was also sort of like, do the NGOs try to lobby the Lebanese government to pass laws or
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, in my previous work, we used to meet with them a lot and propose to them many, many, many different ideas, many different programs. But, and I'm speaking to you like many, many years ago, let's say around 7 years ago. But since then, I haven't been in contact or involved with any governmental entity.
Got it. But so as far as you know, it looks like there's not been any new laws that have been passed over the past 5 or 7 years, right?
I don't think so. I know that laws exist, but I'm not sure what they're doing about these laws.
So a couple of more questions for me is how do you think, you've grown, you've had a visual impairment since you were 8, or it's been progressing over time, but how do you think Lebanon was that time, and how do you think things are moving in the right direction at this point, or do you think things have moved forward, they moved backward, or where do you think Lebanon is on the spectrum, I guess, of being accommodative of people with disabilities?
I think it's moving forward because when I was younger, you never used to hear about different cases. But now people are more comfortable with themselves. NGOs are more involved. You can see different people with disabilities in companies, in schools. They're not as much, but they do exist. For example, inclusive schools, like I haven't seen this 20 years ago. Now you can see inclusive schools. You can see like mainstream schooling systems. I think it's better. It's way better than before. And many people are putting a lot of effort into this field.
Yeah, and probably it's part people like you potentially doing a lot of the work that has pushed things forward. Saying that, so what are your future plans? Your line of work is in the field right now, and what are your future plans and future endeavors to improve things?
Oh my God. Like I have so many dreams that I would like to fulfill and work on in Lebanon because really like Lebanon is very close to all our hearts. When I wanted to work on my PhD, my dream was to have special needs department in each and every university. This is something very, very important, and to have them in schools as well, because this will facilitate the learning process for the school or the university itself and for the student who has a visual impairment or any other disability. This is something I would really like to work on. And if I didn't have the chance to work on, I would love to see it happening in Lebanon. I would love seeing many different places accessible for individuals with visual impairment or with any other disabilities. Like I would like to see them shopping on their own, using public transportation on their own. This is very important. Again, I like to highlight that being independent is the most important thing for any person, and especially for a person who has a certain disability. I would also like to see us in different companies, in different positions in the government. Like I would like PWDs to يعني
be more involved.
يثبتوا حالهم, like يثبتوا قدراتهم. And I would like to see other people accepting them more and more, because they can be very powerful and important individuals in our society.
Yeah, and Yara, you're a great example, I think. I mean, you were able to go through college, you were on the verge of getting your PhD, and it's transformed your life. Instead of like being in business, you've changed your life, you've done the thing that you're passionate about, and you're trying to improve the lives of other people. And on top of that, you're also, as we talked offline, I think you're married, your husband works abroad, comes back and forth, and you've got kids too, right? And so you've been able to juggle your work, your kids, and your husband, and be able to live independently with your visual impairment.
Exactly, with very limited vision. And this is all because I was raised and I was supported to believe in my abilities. Like for me, I take total responsibility of most of the things happening in my life when my husband is abroad. And, having kids is not easy. You need to be involved in society. You need to do many things that involve other people who might not have disabilities. So for me, like whenever I want to introduce myself, the first thing I let them know is that I have a visual impairment, for them not to feel awkward, and for me to feel more comfortable with them, because when people who surround you know about the case, it's much easier for you. You don't feel that you have to act in a certain way. You can be yourself, and this is the most important thing.
Finally, what's your advice to people who are recently diagnosed with visual impairment or have visual impairment in Lebanon currently?
I just want them to know that it is going to be so hard at the beginning, but no one is going to support you as much as you support yourself also at the beginning. So you need to believe in yourself, believe in your abilities, and believe that you can overcome these challenges. It's going to be hard, but you can do it, and try to get out of it, and then try to explain to the people in your community what is this disability, how you would like them to interact, to react with you. I think this is the most important thing, because once you believe in yourself, once you're comfortable with your community and with the people in your society, I believe that you can achieve anything you want. And it's very important, like regardless of all the challenges you're going to face in school and university, it's very important to get an education.
Thank you, Yara, for being on the podcast, and thank you for shedding light on people with visual impairment in Lebanon, and for shedding light also on all the work that's being done by the different non-governmental organizations in the country, including the NGO you are working with currently, Al-Sharik, right? Pro-abled.
Yes, ShareQ NGO, yes.
Exactly, and multiple others that I think we discussed who are doing tremendous work in a difficult situation. But thanks to your work, hopefully things will continue to improve.
Thank you so much, Khalil. And عن جد الله يقويك. It's amazing the work you are doing, and I'm sure it has a huge impact on all the people who are watching these podcasts. Thank you.
Thank you.